Taehyung slapped Jungkook on his birthday, but that night, Jungkook almost took his own life because of a secret he's been hiding all along. When laughter turns into slaps on his birthday, Jungkook disappears. Behind his smile, there is a dark secret that almost took his life. You always have to be the center of attention, don't you? The words came out quiet, barely above a whisper, but they cut through the laughter like a razor to silk. And then, slap, the sound echoed. Loud, unforgiving. Confetti still floated in the air like echoes of a joy that had died too soon. Jungkook stood frozen. His lion mask hung off one ear, crooked. The birthday cake, a fake one loaded with confetti for a laugh, sat on the table, forgotten. The room had fallen completely silent. Even the blinking fairy lights above seemed to flicker with hesitation. Taehyung's eyes were sharp, unreadable. Hurt, maybe, or anger, maybe both. Jungkook looked at him for a moment, face unreadable, before letting out a soft, breathless chuckle. "Sorry, Hyung," he said. Then he turned around, walked out, and didn't come back. That was supposed to be Taehyung's day, his birthday. Everyone had planned something fun. A prank, silly costumes, snacks, music, even a dumb fake award ceremony where each member would get a goofy title. Jungkook had volunteered to lead the prank. Of course he did. Everyone knew he was the golden one. The youngest, the loudest, the funniest. Always the one to make everyone laugh. But Taehyung had been on edge lately. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way Jungkook had been acting, too bright, too loud, like he was forcing it, like he was covering something up. Or maybe it was the way he felt Jungkook pulling away, inch by inch, behind all those grins. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was something darker, more fragile. A fear of being left behind. Still, he didn't mean to slap him, but he didn't mean for his voice to come out like that. He didn't mean for Jungkook to disappear. The next morning, RM knocked on Jungkook's door. No answer. He opened it, slowly, carefully, and saw the room empty. No Jungkook. Only a piece of folded paper left on the desk, weighted down by a pen. The letter was short. "I'm tired of pretending to be strong. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't want to be a burden to any of you." The room exploded into chaos. Jean punched the wall. Jimin collapsed to his knees, sobbing. RM stood frozen, the letter still in his hands, his knuckles white. Taehyung said nothing. His mouth opened once, but no sound came out. Then he turned around and walked out, and no one knew where Jungkook had gone. His phone was off. His wallet still in the dorm. Time passed slowly, painfully. 1 hour became 3. 3 became 6. Panic was growing. Staff were called. Security footage checked. Nothing to IT wasn't until late that night, almost 10 hours after he vanished, that they found him, the old training building. Abandoned for months now. No one used it anymore. But they had once. Years ago. Before fame. Before stages and lights and fans. Back when they were still just 7 boys sharing dreams and ramen, he was on the roof, sitting on the edge, legs dangling, looking at the sky like he was waiting for something to pull him up or push him off. Taehyung was the first to reach him. He didn't say anything. Not at first. He just walked up, step by slow step, heart thudding like thunder in his chest. Then, when he was close enough, he knelt behind Jungkook and wrapped his arms around him tight. Not like a Hyung, not like a friend, like someone who was trying to hold his soul from falling apart. "I'm sorry," Taehyung whispered, voice cracking. "I didn't know you were fighting all of this alone." Jungkook didn't answer. He didn't move. Then, slowly, his shoulders began to shake. Not from the cold, from something deeper, something he couldn't hold in anymore. Finally, he said, soft, almost a breath, "Thank you for coming, Hyung." They stayed like that for a long time. No one else came up. No one needed to. In that moment, the roof was the safest place in the world. Later that night, when they came down together, Jungkook finally asked the others if they could just sit. Not talk, not explain, just sit. And they did. All 6 of them around him, silent, present. And for the first time in weeks, he let himself cry in front of them. It wasn't over. Not even close. But something had cracked open. A door he'd kept locked for too long that a week later, Taehyung posted something on Weverse. "If you ever feel alone, don't wait until someone finds you." Scream first. We'll hear you. But there was still one thing no one knew in Jungkook's old drawer, hidden inside a broken music box, there was a letter written months ago. A letter he never meant to send. A confession no one had read, yet that a truth that could change everything. And someone, someday, would find it. But not yet. Not tonight. The sound of rain was the only thing that filled the dorm that night. It wasn't loud, just the kind that tapped gently against the windows, as if the sky itself wasn't sure whether to cry or hold back. Jungkook lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. His eyes were dry now, but not from peace, more from exhaustion. His body felt heavy, like even the gravity in the room was mourning something. Across the hall, Taehyung couldn't sleep either. He sat by the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. He hadn't spoken much since the night on the rooftop. The words he needed to say were too big, too raw, and none of them made sense in his mouth. But he was trying, in the small things. In how he knocked on Jungkook's door before breakfast. In how he didn't try to force a conversation. In how he was just there. But there was still something unspoken between them, that a silence thicker than any apology could slice through. Jungkook sat up eventually, the clock flashing 3:21 a.m. He walked to the small cabinet at the edge of his room, the one he hadn't opened in months. Dust clung to the handle. His hand hovered over it for a second before pulling it open. Inside was a music box. Old, cracked, one of the first gifts he'd ever gotten during his trainee days. It didn't work anymore, or at least it didn't play music. But that's not why he kept it. He flipped it open, and inside, hidden beneath the velvet lining, was a folded piece of paper. It was yellowing at the edges, the ink slightly smudged, as if it had been handled with nervous fingers too many times. He unfolded it, hands trembling. The letter wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, just started with, "If you're reading this, I guess I didn't make it." He stopped. His eyes stung. The air around him seemed to disappear. The IT was a letter written to no one, and yet to everyone. A goodbye he had written months ago, one of many. But this one felt like a scream from a version of himself he no longer recognized. I don't know when I stopped being me. I think I got lost somewhere between wanting to make people proud and try not to let anyone down. I smile because I don't know how not to. I laugh because silence feels like drowning. I don't know how to say I'm not okay without making everyone else worry. So I just don't say anything at all. Jungkook folded the letter quickly, almost violently, and shoved it back into the box. The door creaked. He turned around and saw Taehyung in the doorway. He was in a hoodie, his face pale in the dim light. "You okay?" Taehyung asked softly. Jungkook nodded. Taehyung stepped in, noticed the box, and his eyes flickered. "What's that?" "Nothing," Jungkook said quickly. Too quickly. Taehyung didn't push. He just nodded, walked over, and sat on the floor near Jungkook's bed. "Can't sleep either," he said, pulling his knees up to his chest. "I keep thinking about what I said. What I did." Jungkook didn't respond. Taehyung looked up at him, eyes a little glassy now. "I wasn't mad at you, Kook. I was mad at myself for not seeing you." Still silence. I keep asking myself, what if I hadn't found you that night? That question hung in the air like a noose. Jungkook turned away, but his voice cracked when he answered. "I wasn't sure you would." Taehyung stood then. He walked to the box, opened it slowly, pulled out the letter Jungkook had just tried to hide, and read it. He read every word. When he was done, he didn't cry. He didn't say anything dramatic. He just sat back down and said, "We're going to get through this." Jungkook looked at him. For the first time in weeks, he actually looked. "We?" Taehyung nodded. "Yeah, we." And that was the moment something shifted. Not everything was healed. Not everything was said. But something cracked open that night. Not like breaking, but like the first tear in a wall before sunlight leaks through. Down the hall, Jimin woke from a nightmare. Sweat on his forehead, heart racing. He didn't know why, but something felt off. Something felt unfinished. And in his dream, fuzzy, unclear, he saw Jungkook standing alone in the middle of a dark room. But he wasn't crying, he was whispering to someone who wasn't there. "Please don't read the second letter." The morning after Taehyung read the first letter, everything seemed calmer on the surface. Jungkook smiled a bit more, stayed in the same room longer, laughed once or twice. But behind his eyes, something still flickered, like a flame trying not to go out, and one mentioned the letter again. Taehyung kept it in his room, locked in a drawer. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that there was another one. The second letter, IT, had been written on a night Jungkook barely remembered, sometime between 2 sleepless weeks and the first panic attack he'd had in a recording booth. He'd buried that one deeper, inside a forgotten tour bag in storage. Unlike the first, this one was addressed to the one who made me feel like I didn't belong. One night, after the dorm was asleep, Jungkook retrieved it. He sat on the floor of the practice room alone, fingers trembling. The words in the letter were raw, angry, messy, and directed at someone he never meant to hurt, someone who had unknowingly become both his anchor and his storm. Taehyung. The letter spoke of the pressure to be perfect, the comparisons, the way Taehyung's effortless charm sometimes made Jungkook feel invisible. It wasn't blame, it was confession. A vulnerable truth he never meant anyone to read. But fate doesn't ask permission. Taehyung found it by accident 2 days later. He was helping Jungkook look for an old hoodie when the letter slipped out of a bag. At first, he thought it was a forgotten lyric sheet. But as he read it, his face paled. Every sentence hit like a wound reopening. And the worst part? He understood. That night, the two of them didn't speak. Not with words. They stood on the rooftop again, the same one where everything almost ended. Jungkook looked at him like he was bracing for impact. But Taehyung didn't yell, that he didn't walk away. He just said, "I've compared myself to you every day since I met you. But I never hated you for shining." Jungkook finally let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His knees buckled slightly, and this time, it was he who hugged Taehyung. Their pain wasn't symmetrical, but it was real, and it was shared. By the end of that week, the dorm felt different. Softer. The members talked more honestly. Jin cooked more. Jimin stopped faking his smiles. Yoongi started sleeping outside his studio again. Namjoon cried, once quietly, after rereading the first letter by himself. They all realized something. They had been living as symbols of strength for too long. And now, finally, they were learning to live as people. The flashbulbs didn't stop. Even when Jungkook winced, even when Taehyung flinched, even when Jimin subtly reached over and took Jungkook's shaking hand under the table, hidden from the cameras. The press conference had started smoothly. It was their first public appearance as a full group since the incident, as the management quietly called it. No one outside knew the truth. No one knew about the rooftop, about the letters, about how close they'd come to losing one of their own. The official story was Jungkook took time off to rest after burnout. That word, burnout, was clean, manageable, easy to digest, but it didn't come close to what it really was. Now, under the fluorescent lights of a hotel ballroom in Seoul, they were supposed to be back, smiling, strong, united. The questions came fast. What was the hardest part of your break? How do you stay inspired? What's your message to ARMY this comeback? Jungkook answered them all with practiced ease. Eyes sharp, mouth curved in that same perfect smile he'd worn for years. But Taehyung could see it. He always could now. That twitch in his left cheek, the stiffness in his posture. Like someone bracing for an earthquake no one else felt. Behind the curtains, Namjoon paced. He didn't want to do this. Not like this. But the world didn't pause for healing. That night, after the press ended, the dorm was too quiet. Jin made hot tea. Yoongi locked himself in his room. Jimin kept scrolling through Twitter until he burst out. They're saying he looked cold, that he doesn't care anymore, that he's different. No one replied, because it was true. He was different, but not in the way they thought. In the hallway, Taehyung approached Jungkook's room. He knocked, but there was no answer. When he opened it, Jungkook was lying on the bed, eyes closed, earbuds in. He didn't move when Taehyung walked in. "Do you want me to leave?" Taehyung asked softly. Jungkook's lips moved, barely audible. "No. Stay." Taehyung sat at the edge of the bed. Silence stretched between them. Then Jungkook spoke. "They're watching me again. Like before. Like I'm made of glass." He turned his head slightly, eyes half open. But they don't know. Taehyung tilted his head. Know what? That I'm still not okay. The words were so quiet, so honest. Taehyung didn't try to fix them. He just listened. And then Jungkook added, barely more than a whisper, I didn't write, just 2 letters. Taehyung froze. Jungkook looked away, eyes back to the ceiling. There's a third. The worst one. The room pulsed with silence. Not dread, wait. As if the air itself had thickened. Taehyung asked, Where is it? Jungkook didn't answer. Not right away. Then, I mailed it. Months ago. I don't remember to who. I wasn't thinking straight. Taehyung stood up, heart racing. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. Jungkook snapped suddenly, sitting up. It could have been a fan. A stranger. Someone from staff. I don't remember. The panic in his voice cracked something inside Taehyung. Because in that moment, he saw the truth. This wasn't over. Not even close. Whatever was in that third letter could destroy everything. The letter had been found. And not by someone they could trust. That IT started with a tweet. Anonymous, vague, but laced with something sharp. If only Army knew what their golden boy really wrote before he disappeared. It went viral in minutes. Panic hit the dorm like a storm. RM was on the phone with legal within the hour. Staff scrambled to trace the source. Jungkook locked himself in his room. Taehyung punched a wall. Jimin cried again. The third letter, Jungkook's darkest confession, had landed in the hands of someone dangerous. A former staff member, long fired, bitter, and forgotten. She had kept the letter like a trophy. And now, she wanted attention. The contents of the letter weren't public yet, but threats were everywhere. Whispers of self-hatred. A line about not wanting to live in a world where I'm just a brand, not a person. It was real. It was raw. It was too much. Jungkook stood on the rooftop again that night. Same ledge. Same sky. But this time, he wasn't alone. All 6 of them were with him. No one spoke, not at first. They just stood there, close, silent, real. Then Taehyung finally broke the silence. Let them see the letter. Everyone turned. What? Namjoon said, stunned. Let them see it, Taehyung repeated, calmer. On our terms. Not as a scandal, but as truth. Jungkook looked at him wide-eyed. You want them to know how broken I was? No, Taehyung said. I want them to know you're still here. The next morning, Big Hit released a statement. Not defensive, not strategic, just honest. Then came the post on Weverse from Jungkook. Himself, he shared the letter, he shared his fear, his shame, his battle. Not for pity, but for connection. I am not always strong. I'm not always okay. But I'm still standing. And I'm not alone. The world responded. Not with hate, but with overwhelming love. Army flooded timelines with hashtag #WeLoveYouJungkook. People share their own stories, their own letters, and Jungkook, for the first time in months, he slept. Not because everything was fixed, but because the weight was finally shared. The morning light poured into the dorm like it hadn't in months, soft, gold, and almost forgiving. There was no schedule that day. No meetings, no rehearsals, just space. Jungkook woke up around 10 a.m., not jolting, not gasping, not dragging himself out of sleep like a man drowning, but gently. For the first time in a long time, he didn't immediately reach for his phone or check social media. He just lay there, breathing. Down the hall, someone was humming that IT was Taehyung. Jungkook followed the sound to the kitchen, where Taehyung stood in pajama pants, swaying slightly while flipping pancakes. He didn't notice Jungkook at first. Not until Jungkook said, "You're burning it." Taehyung turned, wide-eyed. "I am not." Jungkook grinned. It was small, but real. They sat in silence at the table, the smell of overcooked batter and instant coffee filling the air. It wasn't profound. It wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary, and it felt right. Later, they gathered in the living room, just the 7 of them. No cameras, no managers, just a circle of mismatched socks and messy hair and too many blankets. Namjoon spoke first. "Do you know how long it's been since we all just sat together like this?" Yoongi replied without opening his eyes. "Since before Jungkook decided to disappear." Everyone tensed. Then Jungkook snorted. "Wow, thanks, Hyung." Yoongi cracked an eye open. "If you can laugh about it, you're probably doing better." "I am," Jungkook said, IT was quiet for a moment then, but I'm still scared. And that was okay. Because the fear didn't mean he was failing, that IT just meant he was healing. They started talking more after that. Not all at once. Not with perfect words, but in the small moments. Jin leaving sticky notes with cheesy affirmations. Jimin dragging Jungkook to the gym, only to end up sitting on the floor talking for 2 hours. Hobie showing him a new dance he choreographed called Soft Recovery Energy. Yoongi asking, "Are you okay?" and actually waiting for the answer. And Taehyung? He didn't say much, but he stayed close. Every night before bed, he knocked once on Jungkook's door. Just once. No words. Just, "I'm here." Healing wasn't loud, that IT wasn't viral, that IT was slow and repetitive and sometimes invisible. But it was happening. Every day, Jungkook got up, brushed his teeth, and chose to keep going. It was happening that IT was a night like any other, but somehow, everything felt different. The air was thick with anticipation, like something in the universe was holding its breath. The dorm was empty except for the 7 of them. They had just finished rehearsing the last session before they'd step back into the spotlight, and for the first time in ages, no one was rushing to leave. No one was pretending. It had been 3 months since Jungkook had opened up to ARMY, since the letter had been shared, since they'd decided to heal together. The comeback was near, and while the world was watching, waiting to see if the golden boy could come back stronger, if the group could overcome its darkest chapter, the truth was they already had, but tonight wasn't about that. Jungkook stood at the balcony, staring out at the rain. It was pouring down, a sudden summer storm that hadn't been forecasted. The raindrops hit the windows with a soft thrum, like the world was trying to calm them. Taehyung joined him, standing side by side in silence. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" Taehyung said, his voice soft. Jungkook didn't answer at first. He just let the rain speak for him. It had been months of healing, of talking, of reaching out, but the memories still clung to him like shadows. The burn of the letter, the panic of nearly losing everything, the weight of his own secrets. "I was always afraid," Jungkook finally admitted, his voice barely above the storm outside. "Afraid I'd never be enough. Afraid you'd all leave me behind when you saw how broken I was." Taehyung's hand brushed against his shoulder. "We never would." Jungkook turned to face him. "I'm sorry for what happened, for how it went down. I never meant for you to carry that pain, too." Taehyung smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "It wasn't just you, Kook. We all carry something, but it's never been about fixing each other. It's about staying." They stood there for a moment, the rain falling steadily around them, their words sinking deep into the quiet of the night. And then, without warning, Taehyung started to hum that IT was a song they'd written together months ago, when they were all still figuring out how to be honest with themselves and each other. A song about the storm, about how it felt to be lost, and how, eventually, the sky would clear. Jungkook joined in, his voice hesitant at first, then gaining strength as the melody wrapped around him like a blanket. One by one, the others appeared on the balcony, joining in the song. Jin, Jimin, Yoongi, Hobie, Namjoon. They all came together, their voices rising in the rain. And even if the world was listening, even if their comeback loomed like a shadow over everything, tonight wasn't about the world. It was about them. That IT was about them finding each other again. The song grew louder, the rain now a distant background to their harmonies. They sang without fear. They sang without holding back. They sang because, for the first time, they weren't just pretending to be perfect. They were just 7 guys, together, alive, and trying their best to heal. When the song ended, no one moved. They just stood there in the rain, drenched and laughing, faces flushed from the effort. For a moment, there was only peace. The kind of peace that could only come after surviving something unimaginable together. Jungkook turned to Taehyung, his eyes shining. "Thank you for being here, for staying." Taehyung pulled him into a hug, squeezing him tight. Always. The storm didn't last forever. By morning, the sky would clear, and the world would turn its gaze back toward them. But tonight, it was just the 7 of them, singing, healing, and remembering that sometimes you don't have to be strong. You just have to be together.